Last week, investors were worried that Italy's mounting debt burden will have a contagion effect on the rest of the EU, similar to 2010. Is this concern legitimate for you?
Well, for the time being, things have calmed down. But I would not say that we are out of the wood as yet, because we want to see what this new government is going to do, and in particular, whether it will comply with its electoral promises, which of course cannot be implemented without a big problem on the fiscal side.
So let's suppose Italy's debt troubles spiral out of hand. Is the ECB better prepared to handle the situation today than the Greek debt crisis that we saw in 2010?
Now, let me be very clear on this. The ECB cannot do anything for Italy in particular. So I don't think that the ECB could come in and solve Italian problems. Italian problems are not economic problems currently. In flow terms, Italy is doing okay. I mean, it's not great, but it's doing okay. I mean, growth is back, unemployment is coming down, non-performing loans are coming down, a nice primary surplus on the fiscal side. So the problems are created by the intended policy of the parties that form the new government. And the ECB cannot do anything about that, cannot do anything politically, because there would not be a majority in the governing council to do something specific for Italy. And it would make no sense, because if the problem is political and not economic, the ECB has no tools to deal with that. Now, it's a different matter if the problem became systemic, affecting the entire euro area. Then the ECB could do something, but then it would not be something for Italy in particular. It would be something for the system overall.
So do you feel that the new Prime Minister Conte is equipped to deal with all the issues in Italy for the moment? A lot has been said of his lack of experience in politics.
Well, I know as much as you do about him, meaning very little. He doesn't seem to have either a very strong CV, and he's not put in a very strong position, because the strong people in his governments are the two deputies that are the heads of the two parties that are supporting his government. He came in when the so-called contract between Cinque Stelle and Lega had already been finalized, so he could surprise, but the omens are not that we would see a strong figure. Let me add, however, that he would have some force behind him. I mean, if he wanted to use his position, he could, because it would be embarrassing if he would resign for the two parties. But I think that this is the only tool he has, and it remains to be seen whether he would want to use it.
Francesco, let me ask you, what is the probability that Italy leaves the euro, abandons the euro?
Very little, very low, very low. My expectation is that the current government will try and do something about what they said. They would find out that this is not possible, and they would get back to more sensible policies. Now, the big issue is when this will arrive. The later this arrives, the bigger would be the damage. But I think it will arrive before this catastrophic effect of Italy leaving the euro. And maybe, given the two parties, it will be Cinque Stelle that may see more clearly the problems and change its mind. Cinque Stelle is inexperienced. Lega is extremist. And so there is more hope that someone that has no experience will learn. While if you are an extremist, you are unlikely to learn.
So, the rise of the populist movement in Italy, it's really fascinating from a sociological perspective. Do you feel that, Italians are just fed up here, Francesco?
Well, I think that there have been a number of analyses of populist votes. These analyses show that on top of kind of long-term issues, there are two specific shorter-term issues that have determined populist support in the votes. One is economic hardship, and the other is migration. And of course, Italy has been particularly affected by both. Economic hardship, Italy is the country that has lost more GDP since 2007 in the euro area after Greece. At the trough, it was something like 9%. And of course, for geographical regions, Italy is more affected by migration flows. So in a way, it follows into a pattern that economic hardship and migration push up the votes of the populace.
I just want to focus on this issue of migration in Italy. So, we see the new Interior Minister, Matteo Salvini, taking a hard stance against migration. Does Italy need this response here?
Well, I think that the problem of migration was somehow aggravated by the fact, which I think is true to some extent, to a large extent even, that Italy did not get support from its European partners. So it had to deal with this problem more or less on its own. More or less on its own from a financial point of view, more or less on its own from a social point of view. So I think that the phenomenon of migration was aggravated by feeling of having been left alone to deal with it.
Finally, Francesco, you started by saying, Italy is not out of the woods yet. So I guess just to sum up here, what kind of situation is Italy in right now?
Well, it will very much depend, as I said, when the government will understand that they cannot do what they want to do. And they could understand this quickly, in which case, there would be some more tension on the bond market, but not much more than that. But then if they would continue, well, then you could see a repeat of the Greek history. So you could see deposit flight, you could see capital controls, you could see problems in funding of Italian banks. You would see the problem of Italian banks funding the real economy. So I hope that this milestone will not be reached. And I'm confident that Italy will stay in the euro. But as to when the government will understand that it has to change its policy, that I'm unable to do. But the milestone to be looked at are those that I mentioned.
Francesco Papadia, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
And thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow.